In our last episode, we heard about Mimi's culinary adventure in Australia, but after returning home, disaster struck, and she began to struggle with alcohol and comfort eating. You started gaining weight almost immediately after Mom passed.
Yes, and a lot of that was just comfort eating. We were also ordering in a ton. That was the whole, support your local restaurants. That's when Uber Eats and everything really took off, was during COVID, this idea of, everyone went to food delivery. So we were trying to, support our restaurants. I remember we were ordering in dinner, a couple times a week. So we were, even though we weren't leaving the house, we were eating a lot more, restaurant food. I wasn't preparing as much food at home. I was drinking a ton more. I mean, I just, every night it was just kind of how can I just numb these horrible feelings inside of myself so I can go to sleep, so I can just fall asleep tonight. And then, I'd be miserable in the morning, and I would drag myself through another day with the crabby kids and crabby us, stuck in the house, nowhere to go, no one to see, eating, crappy food, and just ad nauseum. It started hitting me sort of, I guess it was in the summer, and I started thinking to myself, oh my goodness, here I am with this 6-month-old baby, and all these kids that I desperately prayed for and wanted. I'm so unhappy. I'm so miserable. I felt uncomfortable in my skin. I was reaching a breaking point.
Was there a moment where you felt like you kind of hit rock bottom?
Yeah. I mean, I started, in the summer, I started really kind of thinking about that. And then in the fall, I was like, okay, I have to do something. I have to do something. And for me, drinking was the real, that was the key for me, because I felt so, enslaved to it, habitually enslaved to it. It wasn't I didn't have to get up in the morning and crack a beer, I wasn't, falling down the stairs. I wasn't, a functioning alcoholic, but it had become this habitual thing that I needed in order to have some relief from my life. And so, in the fall, I started doing these, deals with myself. During the week, I'll only drink beer. And I'll only have bourbon on the weekends. And then I, wouldn't be able to stick to it. Or I would say, well, I'm not going to drink at all during the week. I'll only drink on the weekends. And it'd be Wednesday night, and I'd be screw it. And at a certain point, I was able to step outside of myself after, I think it was probably, September, October, and look at this and be okay, I am not controlling this. This is controlling me. And I will say, there is nothing that motivates me more than when I feel like I don't have control over something, because I love control.
No, not you.
I love it so much. I love to micro control everything. And I'm always working on that, because that's unhealthy too. I realized that I had lost grip of this part of my life. As a person who's an all or nothing person, I realized I was sort of suffering through this silently, and I realized that I was not going to be able to get through this alone.
I remember you sort of collapsed. It was heartbreaking, and I was trying to do everything I could to support you, but this was just one of those things that, nobody can help you.
Right. But I needed accountability, and I think that was the thing, is that I needed to say out loud, I'm having a problem with this. And I'm not good at that. I'm not good at admitting that I'm having a problem with anything.
No, not you.
Here's
never.
Here's the part where you guys get to find out all of my flaws and faults, of which there are many. But I think for me, admitting it was half the battle. Admitting it, saying, this is becoming a problem that I don't feel like I have control over.
Yeah, I remember the morning you came into my office to talk to me about it.
Yeah, that was very difficult.
You're not a crier, and you were pretty broken.
Yeah, it was just, it had reached such a point that I just wasn't sure what to do. I was Googling things, of how, what do you do? Where do you get help? How do you accomplish something like this? And of course, you're the first person, who else would I go to, right? I mean, you're the best friend. You were amazing. You were firm with me, and I think one of the best things was that, you were I'll do whatever you need help with. I'll help you in whatever way, but you have to go get therapy. You have to go get help. And I had needed that for years. which was also hard because hello, COVID. And a lot of practices were not seeing people, in office. And so I did find a local practice, and I was seeing someone via Zoom, which was okay. It wasn't great. And you were very helpful. You poured out all the alcohol in the house, and you were just kind of like, whatever you need, I'll be here. And it wasn't like I was going through DTs or anything. I wasn't, I wasn't drinking so much that I had to go through some sort of detox, but it had become like such an unhealthy coping mechanism. I had forgotten how to do life without it.
You were not a lot of fun to be around.
The first 30 days were really rough. I mean, it was really rough. Because, the thing about what alcohol did for me was that anytime something got uncomfortable, it would just take the edge off. And there was a lot of uncomfortable in myself at that point. I mean, there was 35 years of uncomfortable. And so, the therapy was helpful. It allowed me to at least start verbalizing some of the things. Things that, it's like, you just don't even think about. You're going back to childhood. You're like, oh, and yeah, and then that happened, and then this happened, and then that happened. And then after a while, you look at the therapist, and they're just looking at you like, oh my gosh. And you're like, wait, maybe there is a good reason that I feel so, messed up. Maybe actually having both of your parents die within 5 years of the same disease, is a lot. Maybe, okay, maybe it's okay that I'm, struggling.
Yeah, I remember you coming home after the third session and telling me I think I'm traumatizing my therapist.
I did. She was a really nice girl. And I think, I think I was a lot. I think I was a lot for her. But it was still helpful. It was just helpful to start peeling the layers back. I also found a resource online, and it was called The Alcohol Experiment. And it was a 30-day program. It was free that you could sign up for, and it would send you a daily thought prompt or a writing prompt where you could blog some of your thoughts and feelings about not drinking. And then there would be videos that would sort of explain from a scientific perspective, what are some of your preconceived notions, that it helps you relax? Well, yeah, and then it would say well, actually, this is what it does inside your body. It actually raises your cortisol levels, which makes you feel more anxiety once the cortisol levels drop. And I'm a very I love explanations like that. And so that was really helpful for me to actually start to see the damage it was doing inside my body, just in general, not even the emotional part of it where it was numbing everything and I wasn't dealing with any of my problems, but how it was raising my blood pressure and how it was, causing me to gain weight. And that was super helpful. And there was also a Facebook group, a support group, and I joined that. And so, it was a multi-pronged approach, basically. And I also didn't go into it saying that's it, I'm never going to drink again. I think I was I'm going to do 30 days. And then I got to 30 days and I felt a lot better. The first 30 days were pretty tough. And it wasn't even tough withdrawal symptoms or anything. It's just habitual, right? I mean, I could tell you right when it hit 5 o'clock. I'm in the middle of starting to prep dinner. The kids are starting to lose the plot. And I would just be like, I need a glass of something. But I found that if I had a glass of kombucha or a juice, in a wine glass, I felt the same way as if I would have been having a glass of wine. A lot of it was just the idea that I was doing something for myself in the chaos, that I was stopping to acknowledge myself and take care of myself. And so it was just interesting to kind of observe how my habits changed. And so I was like, well, I'm going to do 60 days. I'm going to go to the end of the year. And by the time I hit 60 days at the end of 2020, as hitting New Year's, my physical well-being, I felt so much better that I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a full year. I'm going to just 2021 alcohol free, not a drop. And I made myself a calendar where you colored in a little tiny piece of each day, and I hung it up on my pantry door. And I was just like, this is what I'm going to do. Now, I will say during that first 30 days and then the 60 days, you're having cravings because it's 5 o'clock and you're like, oh man, I need something. I'm uncomfortable. And I was doing the therapy and it was helpful, but I was allowing myself to eat whatever I wanted because I was really just looking for comfort, as I'm giving up this one crutch, and so at that point over those 60 days, my weight went up to its absolute highest and none of my pants fit anymore. And I remember going to Kroger and just buying like the biggest size leggings they had and like pouring myself into them. And coming up on the new year, I was like, oh my gosh, I've done the alcohol. I'm going to be alcohol free this year. But I literally have never felt so awful.
So where did you peak out at?
So 255. It was 255 and going. Like, I mean, there was no end in sight. I thought, like, man, I traded in this one thing that was so bad for me, and I'm just doing something else that's so bad for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're barely 5'1". I mean,
I was basically round. I was just a circle, a sphere. A ball. I was just a ball with, like, hands and feet coming out, like in one of those comics. I kind of decided, like, all right, here we go. 2021. I'm not drinking anymore, so I have the whole year here with no alcohol, and I have to do something. And I had a couple friends who were doing a program called iFit. There's a fantastic local lady here in Northern Kentucky, Kim Waits, and she runs a program. It's an amazing program. Intentionally Fit, iFit. And a couple people that I knew were doing it and were posting a lot about it. People that I knew that had issues losing weight, and they were losing weight, and they were not just saying like, wow, I took this pill and I dropped this much weight. They were saying like, I can eat all the things that I ate before, but I am learning new ways to fuel my body. The things that they were saying were so positive. There was no food off limits. They didn't hate themselves. It didn't feel like a punishment. They were joyful in this process. And I think that's really what attracted me to it. The idea that it wasn't some crash diet or fad program where you had to cut out an entire food group and make yourself miserable. That it was this idea that, like, you could live your life and do this as part of your life, and it could work for you.
So this is the point where your journey for weight loss started.
Yeah.
Say goodbye to guilt from feeding your family drive-thru and hello to Mimi's Macros. Mimi, our master chef, crafts meals that kids love, making dinner time a breeze. No more settling for fast food or delivery. Treat your family to wholesome goodness. Visit mimismacros.com to check delivery availability in your area. You can order as little or as much as you want with no obligations. Mimi's Macros. Let us do the cooking, you focus on life.
How did you turn this into a reality? How did it actually kind of start?
Well, I had done a lot of different programs and diets, and I would come to you and say, I'm going to do this thing where I eat only this, or I need to spend $120 a month for this package of shakes and powders that I'm going to mix up and drink. And of course, none of them ever panned out into anything because every diet and program that I had ever tried was restrictive and punishing. You can't keep that up.
Right. And I was always waiting for the all bacon diet, and that one just never came along.
Unfortunately, no. After a couple weeks, when you lose the water weight from the carbs, then, you're still just eating a lot of calories. They're just not coming from carbs. But yeah, I remember coming to you. I think we were getting ready to go to bed and we were getting into our pajamas and I kind of brought it up. And I think you were a little hesitant about it, but you, of course, were very gracious. So I signed up for the first round of that year.
Yeah, and just for the record there, I want to kind of say something about that, which is that, you said you were very gracious about it. And what I didn't want to do is do something that would make you stop trying.
Right. You've always been my biggest cheerleader no matter what I do. And so I signed up for that first round. All of Kim's programs, they're 6-week rounds, which is such a great amount of time. Like 4 weeks isn't quite enough. I think 2 months would be too long. It's like 6 weeks is perfect. So I went in trying to forget everything that I ever thought I knew about dieting and food. I mean, I have no preconceived notions. I'm going to go into this with my eyes open. And instead of looking at the caloric intake of something, which is what I had always looked at before, and this time, really the calories weren't important. It was about how many grams of protein each day, how many grams of fat, how many grams of fiber, which was really important. No one had ever talked to me about fiber before, and how many grams of carbs. So you could eat 2 donuts in the morning. You just might have a lower carb dinner that evening because you kind of, hit the majority of your carbs earlier in the day. So that was the thing, is that there was absolutely nothing off limits. You could eat whatever you wanted. You just had to structure your days so that by the end of the day, you were hitting your goals. So I went to Walmart and I went up and down every aisle. I think I took about 2.5 hours and just started picking up random containers of things that I had never eaten before, looking for things that were higher protein, just shopping with the idea in mind of what can I bring into my diet that will complement meals in different ways and different things that I can eat that'll be interesting, that'll meet these specific macro goals every day. So I kind of settled into a routine and I was finding all these foods that were delicious, and I was, working within this framework, and I was having success, like actual real success. The other thing is that you take pictures. That was very difficult for me, but I am so grateful now when I look back at those starting pictures. I'm so grateful that I have them, because it really, on the days when I'm unfocused or I'm struggling or I'm having body dysmorphia and I feel like I haven't lost any weight at all, I can go back and look at those photos, and it's super, super important. So at the end of the 6 weeks, I think I had lost upwards of 10 pounds. Mm-hmm. And not just 10 pounds, but inches. I was actually seeing my waistline come down and my hips come down. And I took pictures at the end of the 6 weeks, and I had a noticeable difference at the end of 6 weeks. But the most amazing thing about it was that I wasn't burnt out on what I was eating. I didn't feel punished. I felt like I'm really excited to go into the next round and do this again because it's easy. After 6 weeks of this, I wasn't having to sit down with a pad of paper and a pen like I was at the beginning and meticulously figure out what my menu was going to be like for the week. I was able to sort of make changes on the fly because I knew, if I eat this at this meal, I can just sub that out for the next meal, and I'll add in maybe a half of a baked potato tonight, and that'll get my carbs where they need to be. I was able to just start visualizing food as fuel. It was all enjoyable, and I really liked what I was eating. My mindset started to shift about the food, that it wasn't a punishment, it wasn't a reward, it was the specific algorithm almost that I had to hit with what foods I was eating. And as long as I plugged in the right foods and it hit the right numbers, I was losing weight. And that to me was just mind-boggling, that I got to the end of a 6-week quote unquote diet. In my mind, the first round, I was thinking like, well, I'm doing this diet, but it's not. I realized at the end of 6 weeks, this was just a complete and total lifestyle change and mindset shift that I could keep doing long term and have success.
So what was it that made you decide to add the exercise?
It was in the beginning of the second 6-week round. Kim had posted about a boot camp that was starting at a local gym. So it's Juggernaut Fitness in Florence, owned by Jagger Holbrook. And there was a physicality that was missing, that I was not going to get to the goals that I wanted if I didn't start moving my body. And I sometimes feel like I have two people living inside my brain. The me who doesn't like to do stuff like that, and then the sneaky me literally clicked on the link, filled everything out on the Google form, and made the Venmo payment within the first 5 seconds of having seen the post. And then I had like instant terror and regret.
What have I done?
Yes. Because I knew I was so out of shape. I had not really exercised as an adult in years. And even when I was exercising as an adult, I was walking. I was fast walking on a treadmill. I was not lifting weights. And this was just the next domino that followed. I definitely had a good excuse to not go, because the very first boot camp, there was a terrible, terrible snowstorm. I had this battle of wills going all day that was like, no one would expect you to be there. The weather's way too bad. Most people aren't going to come. You should just stay home. You can start another day. But then that part of me that, quickly signed up before the other part of me could talk myself out of it, was sort of like, you're not afraid of driving in the snow, and if you don't go tonight, when will you go? And so I just went. I had no workout clothes. I didn't own a sports bra. I didn't own appropriate footwear. I didn't own workout leggings. And I was waiting for more people to show up, and no one else showed up. So instead of it being this giant group setting, I showed up and this was like a one-on-one workout session. And it was leg day. We did like 3 sets of 10 squats, and then we ran the stairs. So just one flight of stairs up and down. And we came back down. We did, I think, 3 sets of 10 squats, ran the stairs. So this is very basic. I mean, this is just body weight exercise. When I think about it now, the amount that I can squat now and the amount that I can run now and all of these things. But I think back to that, 85 pounds ago, and imagining that, like, on my body right now, putting an 80-pound vest on me and having me run up a flight of stairs. I mean, I can't even imagine how heavy that would be. But that was me when I started. And by the 3rd time we were running up and down those stairs, I couldn't. I was walking up them and I was using the handrails to pull myself up. And this was just like the first 15 minutes of class. And I was having just these thoughts of, what have I done? This is so bad. Like, this is so bad. And of course, they were all so supportive and so wonderful and so gracious. I think that was always one of my fears, having people watch me or make fun of me or mock me just because of what a beginner I was. But there was none of that. There was nothing other than just, you've got this, you can do this, we're behind you, I will push you up the stairs if I need to, like, we are going to get this done. And I went home and I was in so much pain. I couldn't carry the kids up and down the stairs. But I went back, purely, I think, because of the environment.
It's frustrating paying for mail-order meals that taste like cafeteria food. So say goodbye to paying for blah and hello to Mimi's Macros, where flavor meets convenience. Mimi ensures that every dish is a culinary masterpiece. In fact, Mimi is so confident that you will love her food that there are no subscriptions and no minimums. That's right, you can order as little or as much as you want with no obligations. Visit mimismacros.com to check delivery availability in your area. Mimi's Macros. Let us do the cooking, you focus on life.
This was the point where everything that you had learned in Australia, all of a sudden, this stuff just kind of started to come together.
I wasn't at the point yet where I was really pulling on all of the things that I learned and all of the techniques that I learned, but I was certainly pulling on my food background and my knowledge just of how to combine ingredients. Like, if I have this ingredient but I roast it first, that'll bring out its natural sweetness and that'll balance out the fact that this is a saltier thing and it'll be really delicious. But I don't have to add sugar and sacrifice those carbs because I'm going to pull the natural sugar out of whatever food that I'm eating by cooking it a certain way. You caramelize onions, they're sweeter than if you just eat them plain. So just things like that, like just the intrinsic knowledge that I had about food was helping me when I was meal prepping for myself. I would do these boot camps and I would be burning a lot of calories and I would feel absolutely sick afterwards. But by the time I got home, I was so hungry, I was much more likely to make poor choices.
Right.
So that's when, like, the idea of prepping became important to me. I started creating like a lexicon of really good recipes, really solid recipes that I was pretty proud of. And Kim was just dead set. She was like, we need a meal prep company that does like macros, stuff for my community. We need someone to do meal prep. You should do this.
Well, and I remember you would go in and you would do personal training, and then you had half an hour, 45 minutes before your boot camp. And so you started making those meals and taking them with you and microwaving them there. And then you're sitting in the waiting room in the front and you're eating these things and people are coming over going, boy, that smells really good, man. What do you got there? And,
well, I would bring this food in and it would smell delicious. So yeah, there was a lot of attention and interest for sure. And I just thought, I'm just going to create this little thing where I put a menu out every week and then people from the gym can order, their 5 or 10 meals or whatever it is. And I'll make them and I'll deliver them to the gym. So Kim was basically like, hey, we're having this get together at the gym, and there was going to be a grill out, and I think there was a dodgeball game or a kickball game, and it was kind of like an open house for the gym. And she was like, this would be a perfect day. This is the perfect day. You should just have something available. Just, get some paper menus out, bring some samples of your food. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think we had kind of decided on this like 4 days before the open house. And I remember sitting down and I thought, I guess I should make a logo or something. And I guess I should have a name. So I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop. And I think at a certain point, because you're the creative one, I said, like, what do you think about Mimi's Macros? And you were like, that's cute. I like it. So I looked at, free clip art. And I spent a couple hours going through it. And I found clip art and I gave that information to you and let you work your wonders on, a logo for me. And I came up with a brief menu just on paper, and I printed, 20 of them. And then I put together maybe 6 different menu options, and I did about like 6 of each one. So I rocked up to this open house and I was like, hey, I make these egg cups and I make this chicken salad, and it's pretty good and it's really high protein. And if you like it, you can order from me. And Kim is taking some pictures and she's like, hey, I'm going to post this on Facebook. What's your Facebook page? And I'm like, oh, I don't have one. And I remember I just sat down really quickly on one of the big tractor tires and I created a Facebook page really quickly just so she had something to link. And that's how it began. I would get Facebook messages with people's orders, and then I would respond with their total, and they would Venmo me. And then I would, prep everything, and I would take it to the gym, or people could pick it up at my house.
But it got more complicated that, because I remember then people were texting you, and then some people were emailing you, and there was all these different ways that people were trying to get this to you, and it just started to get just unmanageable.
Yeah.
And you were afraid that you were going to miss someone's order or mess something up.
Yeah, and I did actually. I found a message from someone who had ordered. It was a small order, and I just whipped it up. I had the ingredients to do it, and so I was able to fulfill the order, but I will never forget that heart-sinking feeling of realizing that someone here was, counting on these meals for the week, and I had not made them because I had just lost their message in the jumble of all the other messages. And it was a terrible feeling. I'm a perfectionist. I like everything to be perfect. And so that's when I came to you and said, hey, I need some way to do packing slips so I can see what each person ordered so that when it's time to pack their bag, I can more easily pull out what I need to pull out. And you started doing the research for me and found a great solution and said hey, I can do this, and it'll generate a packing slip, but even better, people can just pay on the website, and then, you can see as the orders come in, and you have one place to track it, and it'll take the payments for you, and you won't have to do any of this, and then at the end there's a packing slip. And I was like, fantastic, sign me up.
So let's just kind of circle back. How was the weight loss progressing as you did this?
Yeah, so it was just slow and steady. I was working out and I was counting my macros. At this point, I was down around 30 pounds by that summer when the meal prep business was really taking off. And I loved that feeling. And so as I was starting the meal prep business, all of these things were coalescing together. I was becoming good at exercise. I was becoming somewhat athletic.
And there's something I want to note here is that you had reached the point where people were coming up to you at church and just saying, oh my gosh, you look so good. People we hadn't seen for a while, they would see you and they would do a double take. Oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I think that was that moment of victory.
It's hard to even put into words how many things were changing all at the same time. So number one, my experience with exercise was changing from always feeling like it was a punishment in the past. It felt so good. And I started realizing if I would skip a week, my mental health would suffer. So that was changing. My relationship to exercise and body movement was changing. My relationship with food was still changing as I was continuing to do Intentionally Fit with Kim. as I was coaching on this stuff, as I was developing recipes, as I was cooking all of these healthy things and finding this is really where the joy started coming up when I started doing recipe development, where I would think like, oh, I want to take French toast and make it super healthy. And I would just imagine people eating this French toast out of this container and being like, how can I be eating this? It's so delicious. And yet there's 35 grams of protein in it, like turning keys on joy that I hadn't had around food in a really long time.
Yeah. And I think something that's interesting to note here is, if we go all the way back to the first podcast, where you started from and how it was this feeling of like, my body's out of control. I don't have any control over my body. Food is my enemy and also a guilty pleasure. I'm angry at myself, and you had so much grief from the loss of your parents. All of that stuff was going on at once. And now here we are. You now find yourself in control of your body for the first time. You now have a healthy relationship with food. You have incredible culinary skills with that food. Exercise is starting to feel almost like a reward. And all of the grief and other things that you had said, I'm just kind of jamming this stuff down and I don't deal with it. Now you're able to talk about it. We're literally looking at this 180-degree turn from where you started out at.
I was in an unsustainable place. There was so much inside that was so awful and traumatic and painful that I couldn't just live with it. I had to do something. And if I wasn't going to drink bourbon and shove it down, and I wasn't going to eat half a chocolate cake and shove it down, I had to do something. And so it was this multi-pronged approach that started healing this relationship and almost made me into a completely different person.
And then out of that blossomed this company that you never really intended to start. And then 6 months later, we're having to find a commercial kitchen to get you into. All of this stuff has really sort of come to fruition that you were aiming for in the very beginning.
Yeah. Once people had a website to share and I started getting sort of a process down for myself, orders just continually rose. My order volume went up week by week. At that point, you went ahead and incorporated the company for me and trademarked everything and, got everything set up legally. And
that was the point when we had 5 refrigerators in our garage.
Yes.
And I remember going around to the side of the house and looking at the electricity meter, and it was just like spinning like a Frisbee, man. Just,
Yep. Yeah. I was definitely outgrowing the house. I needed an actual commercial kitchen. And I came across the incubator kitchen down in Newport, really liked it. And right after we toured it, I got an email out of the blue from one of my brothers saying, hey, I saw this in the news and I thought of you. And it was a link to a grant program, incidentally, run by the incubator kitchen. And the deadline was in like 4 days. And so I remember forwarding it to you and you filled out all the information for me because you were kind of doing all my back end stuff. I was drowning just in the cooking portion of things. And I heard back from Rachel, who runs the kitchen, just within a couple weeks. And she kind of interviewed me and had some questions about my business and said, we'll let you know in a couple days. And the next day I had an email saying, congratulations, you are a grant winner. Orders were continuing to rise and I started marketing and I realized I needed staff.
And I remember it was a real period of growth and bootstrapping and just, Band-Aids and rubber bands and whatever it took to make it work.
But my business is debt-free and it has been debt-free this whole time. And so a lot of that is part of it is that, if I could get it for cheaper, then I would get it for cheaper. And if it just meant that I had to, put some more elbow grease into it, and you were great about, helping me with that as well. I was going to make it work one way or the other, because at this point, I had drivers who were running routes for me every week and they relied on that income. And then I had staff. And once I had staff and they were making a paycheck, there was a great level of responsibility that came with that. The success of the business was no longer just about me. It was about me and the people that I was paying. I was pregnant that year. with my last baby. And I get very, very sick through my pregnancies. And this last one was absolutely the worst. And I was not able to work out. I was not able to take in the amount of calories that I needed in order to work out. So I stepped back. Now, at the same time, I was losing weight because I'm very, very, very ill in my pregnancies. So I was continuing to drop weight. And I got to the point at the end of that summer, I was down about 50 pounds at that. And there was just a lot going on. That was when you sort of started your business, and, I had the baby and I had my business that I was trying to grow, and everything was good. Everything was really settled into the way the kitchen ran and the joy of creating the food. And I was able to bring, as I started developing recipes, I was bringing more and more of my technique into play, and that's been super fun. That's still something that I'm always pushing myself to create things that are just another level above, or how do I make this in such a cool way or an interesting way, or these great flavor combinations. I'll think of stuff in the middle of the night, and I have multiple recipe creation notepads going. I have a physical notepad, I have notes on my phone, I have spreadsheets going of different recipe ideas. That part has continued to be fun and is just getting more and more fun, honestly, as I go forward in this. But I had Timmy at the end of August, and I went from being super ill, of course, being pregnant, and then starting my breastfeeding journey with him. And as happened with all of my other kids, the weight started coming back on immediately. And I quickly got back on my macros. I got updated numbers from Kim for breastfeeding. I hopped back on around. I was like, okay, this is not going to happen this time, because with all of my other kids, I would lose a bunch of weight during pregnancy. And then as I was breastfeeding, it would just start ballooning up. And I was like, I'm determined this time. I'm going to get back in the gym. I'm going to be, tracking my macros again. Like it's not going to happen this time. And it did not matter what I was doing. It was creeping on 5 pounds at a time. And I was just watching that scale go up, and I just became so frustrated. I went right back to that same feeling of, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do. My body wants to be at this higher weight around 230, and it's just not happy unless it's there. And that's when I came to you and said, I think I really want to do bariatric surgery, because everything that I can do to get my weight down is a tool. And I don't think that you just get one tool or two tools. Like, you can use a lot of tools. You can use all the tools at your disposal. And I'm also at the point now where it's like, if you've been buying my food and then you don't want to buy my food because I had bariatric surgery, I guess there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can say that would change anybody's mind. And I need to be as small as I can get myself in a healthy way. For me, that looked like becoming sober. And then it looked like gastric sleeve surgery. And then it might look like weight loss medication in the future to get me down even further to, towards my goals. I want to be mentally healthy. I want to be physically healthy. I've been able to lose about 40 pounds since the surgery, which is fantastic, which brings me down, about 85 pounds now, combined with Intentionally Fit, counting macros, surgery, everything else. And I would like to lose another 40. My story is a lot like many people's stories out there, where they have damaged relationships with food, or they don't feel comfortable in their body, or they feel like exercise is a chore or a punishment, or maybe they're on the cusp of bariatric surgery and they're not sure whether to step off that ledge or not, or they've never heard what a macros is and they're stuck in a binge and diet cycle, yo-yoing up and down. And I feel like if I can be more honest about my own journey that's not even over, if I can share more, if I can speak more, and if I can be more vocal, then I can impact those people and maybe show them some hope, show them a light, maybe get them hooked up with Kim's program, or maybe, get them hooked up with some food that can, set them on the right path, show them that eating healthy doesn't have to be a chore, it doesn't have to be a punishment.
So if there's somebody out there right now who's stuck in that place like you felt like you were stuck in, listening right now, what would you say to them?
You have to take the first step. You have to take the first step And you have to realize that doing these things, it's a gift to yourself.
And so, dear listeners, this brings us up to date with Mimi's journey. But I'm sure you understand when I say that it's probably far from over. In the coming weeks, months, and hopefully years, she'll be here, talking about food, exercise, and interviewing people who have also been through an incredible journey. We hope you'll join us every Monday. Thanks for listening.